Hi everyone. I was reading from the miracle principles. Many of you have noticed that when you practice these thoughts that are giving you in the mind training lessons in the workbook of A Course in Miracles, that you start to think differently. Because what? You're being taught a thought system that is in every aspect the opposite of the thinking of the world. Because what it says is that nothing the world believes is true, right? It's based on a thought system that you're separate from source, that you're a body, that there are things outside of you, you name it. And the new way of thinking that this course is trying to bring about in you, which obviously is what we call awakening, spiritual transformation, right, is the opposite of that. It's an uncompromising way of thinking, right? You're no longer trying to reconcile opposites. You're learning to think with the universe. You're learning to think with God. You're being aligned with the vertical, no longer with slow time or the horizontal. In other words, you're being sped up. Time is being sped up for you. And I'm going to read this because it's so beautiful how he expresses this in the text. He says, the miracle minimizes the need for time. This is true. Right? And again, the way you experience that is you're being sped up in your own time association with yourself. It says, in the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the equality of the members of the sonship appears to involve almost endless time. This is true. If you're in slow time, trying to bring about what the Course is offering you seems to take forever. But this is where the miracle comes in. And the miracle, what he's going to say is that you're going to be saving a lot of time because you're being realigned from the horizontal to the vertical. And in that process, whole intervals of time are simply being snipped out for you. Right? So he says, however, the miracle entails a sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception. I love that. Right? He says this introduces an interval from which the giver and the receiver, I love it because there's always this interaction between giver and receiver going on, emerge farther along in time than it would otherwise have been. We call this a teaching learning situation, right? Where for a moment someone appears to be giving apparently to something to someone else, but truly is mutual, right? And both emerge further along in time because for one moment we agreed that we're going to learn from each other and join with each other. And whole intervals of time are being snipped out because what would have taken us 1,000 years is now done in just one instant. He says the miracle thus has the unique property, here it is, of abolishing time to the extent that it renders the interval of time that it spends unnecessary. Right? It no longer is necessary that you're going to spend that time learning it because the miracle just brought about that shift in your awareness, in your perception. And that increase in frequency now makes what you were supposed to learn unnecessary because it's just being brought about in you. I hope that makes sense. For those of you that are aware of that increase in frequency, that are aware of what I'm talking about, you know what I mean, right? Because what we're talking about, of course, is an experience, not conceptually. We feel the increase in frequency. We feel that everything is going faster and faster and faster, and that the end of time, or the time when you reach the goal of this course, is that that close, right? You're right there. It says here there's no relationship between the time that the miracle takes and the time that it covers, right? Again, very often it's just an instant, right? But that instant could spend any amount of time that you're being saved now because that sudden shift that the miracle brings about in your mind just occurs, right? So it's the idea of you're trying to forgive someone, right? And you're just having a tough time with it or trying to forgive something. And suddenly you practice the lessons and you practice, and suddenly that correction takes place. And now you can't even find the problem anymore, let alone you need to forgive it. What happened? The miracle, right? It just eliminated the blocks to the awareness of love presence. It brought about that shift of, right, that thought that wasn't real to begin with. It undoes illusions in you, it undoes your idea of yourself. It saved you a lot of time. It could have taken you another 100 years, right, to get over it. And it was just done in an instant. It says the miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years, and it does so by the underlying recognition of perfect equality, which is true. Again, the equality of the sonship, right? In truth, you and me are equal because there's only one of us, right? In time, we may, for a moment, not to see me be equal, right? One of us might be a little bit further along in time than the other, but remember, that can also reverse easily, right? Correct? So giving and receiving are the same. You know, when you teach or when you learn or when you give or when you receive, that's the same thing, right? In that sense, all teaching is teaching to yourself. You're only teaching yourself. All giving is a giving to yourself because giving and receiving are the same. It says, it does so by the underlying recognition of perfect equality of giver and receiver on which the miracle rests, right? Why does the miracle, why is it able to abolish time? Because giver and receiver are one, right? It seems like you're giving to someone else, but you're not. And again, I'm talking about an experience, and it's really hard to express that in words. But again, if you're aware of it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're not, don't worry about it. Because truly, this is not about a conceptual understanding. This is about the practice of it. And the practice brings about the result, and only the practice brings about the result. Right? Trying to understand a Course in Miracles conceptually is not the goal of this course, and certainly not what you should be doing. It's truly that practice. Practice the ideas within your own mind. And understanding comes because of the increase in frequency, right? The understanding becomes because the interference in your mind that blocks your awareness is being taken away, right? So don't try to understand it conceptually. You're simply being asked to understand by practicing, by increasing the vibration. It says the miracle shortens time by collapsing it, thus eliminating certain intervals within it. It does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. Many of you out there have been amazed by the changes that have occurred in you, in your life, in your mind, in everything, right? Because of how you're practicing these lessons. In essence, you're better off trying not to understand it and practicing it than trying to understand it from your limited perception. It just doesn't work that way. We recently did a beautiful weekend, and I heard one of the attendants say, I find the Course in Miracles very hard to understand. And it's because you're trying to understand it from your old mind. You can't understand it from your old mind. You can't understand it within your old way of thinking. It doesn't make sense because it doesn't fit. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite of that thinking. What you're being asked to do is for a moment trust what he says. He says it doesn't matter whether you believe this, it doesn't matter whether you like it. Uh, the only thing that we're requiring is that you practice these ideas. Huh? Practice makes perfect. Right? Only the practicing can bring about the goal of this course. What happens before you know it when you practice these ideas without making exceptions, right? As he so beautifully tells you to do, your thinking changes. It cannot not because somewhere you've made the agreement that you wanted to learn this, and although maybe you didn't understand it, you're practicing it, and the moment you start practicing it, something changes. And the next moment you can't even find why you ever thought this was hard or why you ever had a problem with this or whatever conflict you experience with these ideas. Because what? The miracle happens. The miracle happens. That shift in thought was being brought about in you, has been brought about in you. And you find yourself a lot less conflictual. You find yourself happier and freer and more relaxed than you have ever been. Because what? You're finally starting to, right, release those blocks to the awareness of lost presence. You're finally starting to experience yourself, at least in to some extent, as you truly are. There might be some more undoing of fear that needs to occur in you, but the release of the fear brings about that relaxation, that release of the tension of self identity by the miracle, by these new thoughts, is freeing, is relaxing, right? I hope that makes sense. And again, I'm talking about an experience here. I'm not trying to teach this conceptually. I'm talking about what occurs to you when you accept these ideas. It's a happy occasion. Salvation is a game that happy children play. It's a joyful experience. When two minds experience each other's oneness, recognize their oneness, they become glad. How would you not be if you see that the guy out there that you thought was an enemy is your long lost best friend that you've rejected and has always been there for you and always been completely faithful to you, but you just misidentified him. I've heard this once expressed, you thought you were being pursued by the hounds of hell, and at some point you just stopped and you turned around, turned to be the puppies of heaven. You can express it in any way you like, but the fact of the matter is, the guy out there that you reject, the guy out there that you hate, the guy out there that you have a grievance against is your savior. He's the one that you gotta forgive. And the moment you forgive him, you'll be free. You're free. And what? You free them along with you. Because what holds this world in change but your beliefs? And what undoes it, right? And what can set it free but yourself, capital S. This is an easy course, but you are required to apply it. You are required to make no exceptions, right? The reason that sometimes this experience is not easy is because somehow you're trying to conform it to your old way of thinking. You can't. It can't. It doesn't fit. It's the opposite of that. It's trying to undo it. And that's where the conflict is then experienced. But the moment you don't worry about it, you just practice it, everything changes. So I hope that makes sense. I just wanted to just kind of, as an idea for today, teach the way that the miracle saves you time, right? Because sometimes the end can be seem a long, long way off. You go like, I'm never gonna get this. This is hard. I don't understand this. Don't worry about it. Again, the miracle will simply speed up your time. And before you know it, you don't have a problem anymore. You understand it perfectly because you let the miracle increase your frequency to the extent that you're in your new mind. You're a whole new self, right? You're a whole new you. Anyway, I love you wherever, whenever you are. Have a great day, and I'll see you everywhere.